You were conditioned to chase claps long before you did anything worth clapping for. That wasn't an accident, it was training. Little by little, you learned to measure your worth by other people's eyes. Grades, likes, nods, good job. Your spine bent before you ever learned to stand on it. So now you perform, not from conviction, but from the comfort of being seen. That craving for approval? It isn't affection. It's a leash. And notice what the crowd actually rewards. Not truth, not courage. They reward comfort. They applaud what doesn't threaten them. Your predictability, your agreeable tone, the way you sand down your edges so no one gets a splinter. Play it safe, and you'll collect smiles. Shrink a little more, and they'll call you kind. Betray your own fire to keep them warm, and they'll hail you as mature. But the person who doesn't need their eyes, the one who can move through darkness with zero applause, that's the one they fear. Why? Because you can't bribe someone who doesn't need compliments. You can't control someone who isn't thirsty. Here's the line no one wants to cross. You were not designed to be likable. You were designed to be unmovable. Every time you soften a message that should land sharp, you're negotiating away your sovereignty for temporary warmth. When you dilute your tone for fragile ears, you're not being empathetic, you're submitting. You're teaching the world how to treat you. What you tolerate becomes your identity, and what you seek owns you. The need to be understood, admired, validated. It doesn't make you deep, it makes you exposed. It's a soft spot any manipulator can press. The minute they sense it, they don't have to outthink you. They only have to feed you. You'll do the rest. Maybe you're waiting for the day they finally see you, so you can finally allow yourself to believe in yourself. But be honest, that's you outsourcing your backbone. If they clap, you'll move. If they frown, you'll stall. A true prince doesn't ask for reassurance, and he doesn't pause when doubted. He imposes not with noise, but with clarity. The pace of action, the choice of silence, the refusal to explain himself to earn permission he never needed. Power isn't democratic. It's not handed out like ballots. It's taken quietly, consistently, by those who do not put their confidence up for a vote. Let's tear off another illusion. Validation isn't a reward, it's a chain painted gold. The more you crave it, the more you announce your price. Compliment me, and I'll comply. That's all the leverage the world needs. What is applause, really? It's the sound of postponing your execution. They cheer while you fit their narrative. Step outside it, and the same hands that clapped will build the pyre. The crowd is fickle, fragile, and faithless. They're not evil. They're human. And human nature prefers a mirror to a window. They don't want to see more. They want to see themselves, which is why your predictability sells so well. Dress your ambition in soft tones, and they'll approve. File your edges, and they'll nod. Become a portrait instead of a presence, a face that pleases, and you'll be invited everywhere but respected nowhere. Meanwhile, behind the mask, resentment grows. Self-betrayal compounds interest. Eventually, you forget your own features. You don't just play a role, you become the role. That's the great trap of living by reflection, a life spent collecting images of yourself from other people's eyes. One room asks for humble, so you become less. One room asks for safe, so you round off your thoughts. One room wants a softer truth, so you water it down and call it balance. Piece by piece, your center gets outsourced. You become whatever keeps the smiles coming. Peace isn't power. Sedation isn't safety. Applause isn't confirmation. It's control. The world will always offer you the same trade: authenticity for affection. Be more agreeable. Be less intense. Be easier to digest. Liked by whom? By people who profit from a quieter version of you. People who need your silence because it protects their illusions. So let them disapprove. Let them misread your silence. Let them call you cold, arrogant, aloof. Good. Discomfort is just the sound of their frame cracking around your truth. There is no throne for the one who fears rejection. There is no kingdom for the soul that begs for permission to be powerful. Here's the brutal law. If your identity is borrowed, it can be repossessed. If your confidence is rented from other people's opinions, you can be evicted without notice. You want control? Withdraw the supply. Cut off the drip of compliments, likes, and reassurances. Starve the part of you that trembles until it finally dies. On the other side of that death, you're born. The you, who doesn't need to be seen to move, who doesn't need to be heard to speak, who doesn't need an echo to know his voice is real. Power isn't loud, it isn't praised. It's earned through detachment, discipline, and ruthless self-containment. You can't be respected if you're dependent. You can't be followed if you're still asking to lead. Every system you grew up in taught you to beg. Raise your hand, wait your turn. Don't offend. They carved obedience into your posture and called it polite. But that obedient version of you is a mask. A comfortable one maybe, but still a mask. Rip it off. Let it draw blood if it must. Underneath is the person who never needed permission in the first place. And when that person stands up, the room will change. Some will submit, some will flee. None will forget. Because nothing is more unforgettable than the presence of someone who does not bargain with his own certainty. When you finally burn the hunger for validation out of your system, something strange happens. You stop scanning faces for approval. You stop rehearsing your words for softness. You stop waiting for the room to feel safe before you speak. That's the moment they feel it. Not admiration, not warmth, tension. Because a man who no longer needs them is a man they cannot predict. And unpredictability is power. They'll call it arrogance. They'll call it ego. But what they're really naming is your refusal to bend. They're calling your independence a threat because it is. You're no longer part of their emotional economy. They can't negotiate with you through praise. They can't manage you with shame. You've become unpredictable, not from chaos, but from sovereignty. You don't react to flattery, and you don't shrink from scorn. You move like a force of nature, not a servant asking permission before he rises. That alone unsettles people who are promised a predictable world. Understand this. When you free yourself from the need to be liked, you expose how many others are still in chains. And that exposure makes them uncomfortable. They'll try to pull you back with compliments disguised as warnings. Tone it down and you'll go far. You'd be more successful if you were less intense. Those aren't observations. They're attempts to make you small. Subtle demands that you return to the version of yourself they can manage. But you're not here to be manageable. You're here to be undeniable. This is where most people falter. They trade their edge for affection, thinking they're being strategic, when really they're just afraid. They smile when they want to roar. They smooth tension to protect other people's egos. They explain themselves endlessly to audiences that will never understand. They convince themselves that if they're patient enough, soft enough, agreeable enough, they'll finally be seen for who they are. But the truth is brutal. The more you seek to be seen, the less you are. The more you soften, the less of you remains. From this point on, your allegiance cannot be to comfort, peace, or false connection. Your allegiance must be to truth. And truth does not apologize. Truth does not ask for permission. It simply exists, raw, sharp, unwelcome if necessary. And so must you. Because if your words never offend, you've already abandoned yourself. If your presence never unsettles, you've already diluted your power. The world respects only what it cannot manipulate. That's why the man who walks without the need for validation becomes the one thing the world cannot mold. He is immune to both flattery and insult. Unmoved by reward, unreachable by shame. He becomes what everyone secretly wishes to be but fears becoming, a sovereign. Not a king of others, a king of himself. No leash, no handler, no invisible master whispering, "Make sure they like you." His voice is his own. His silence is strategic. His direction is internal. That kind of man is dangerous because he cannot be redirected. He cannot be softened. He cannot be stopped except by force. And even then, the legend endures. You want to be that man? Then let the old self die. The one who flinched at every disapproving glance. The one who scanned the room for signs of acceptance before he spoke. The one who delayed truth, delayed action, delayed power until the room felt safe enough for him to reveal himself. Kill that man with precision. He was never built to rule. He was a shadow kept alive by fear. Once you bury him, burn the map that led you there. Leave no path back to the version of you who begged for softness. From now on, softness will be a choice, not a weakness. Kindness will be deliberate, not reflexive. And your power will be silent, sharp, and unrelenting. Don't fear being alone. Fear being surrounded by people who only see you when you're agreeable, who only support you when you shrink, who only validate you when you betray your edge. Those aren't friends. They're jailers with smiles. Let them go. Let their confusion echo behind you like a whisper from another life. You're not here to be understood. You're here to disrupt. And the man who disrupts cannot seek consensus. He cannot wait for permission. He moves first, speaks last, and never explains. Because when your power is real, your silence is louder than applause. The moment you stop needing their approval, you start terrifying them. Because now they're forced to wonder what you'll do next. Not because you told them, because you owe them nothing. You've become untethered, and that makes you uncontrollable. They don't fear the loud ones. They fear the one who no longer plays the game, the one who doesn't flinch when ignored, the one who doesn't soften his tone when doubted, the one who doesn't chase. Because that man cannot be baited, cannot be guilted, cannot be bought. And if he cannot be owned, he must be either obeyed or eliminated. Expect attempts to drag you back. Old invitations. Sweet words echoing like songs from another era. You've changed, they'll say. You used to be more open, more kind. What they really mean is, you used to be pliable. You used to bleed on command. You used to bend when we frowned. Now that version of you is dead. They're mourning a ghost, and in their grief, they'll try everything. Mockery, flattery, even concern. You're isolating yourself. You're becoming cold. Good. Let it chill the air. Let your detachment freeze every lie they once fed you, because they were never trying to see you. They were trying to shape you, and you've outgrown the mold. This is your rebirth. But unlike the soft, marketable versions of healing they sell you, rebirth isn't gentle. It's violent. It's surgical. It requires you to cut away parts of yourself that once felt necessary. The smile that smoothed tension. The softness that protected their egos. The endless explaining that diluted your truth. Burn them, not because they were evil, but because they kept you small. You'll be tempted to grieve them. Don't. Those were tools that served you when you were weak. But you're done performing weakness for love. You're done using self-sacrifice as currency. You will not pay to be seen. You will not bleed to be held. You will not trade sovereignty for company. Never again. You don't have to become cruel to do this. You have to become clear, crystal, razor, deliberate. Not angry, not defensive, just silent in the face of nonsense. Unmoved by attempts to explain you back into submission, indifferent to being misunderstood. That is what real power feels like. Not yelling, not convincing. Choosing your direction without pause. Speaking your truth without sugar. Leaving when peace demands distance. Staying when discomfort is the price of integrity. Because comfort is no longer your God. Growth is. You weren't made to feel safe. You were made to become dangerous, not to other people, but to every story that ever made you forget your own weight. You do not owe the world a version of yourself they can swallow easily. You owe yourself the freedom to be so real, it stings. So firm, it polarizes. So rooted in your own voice that their confusion becomes irrelevant. If you want to be followed, you must first become unrelatable. If you want to be respected, you must first become feared, not through cruelty, but through the unshakable clarity of your presence. A presence that doesn't move for applause. A presence that doesn't shift for validation. A presence so whole it confronts every fragment in others just by standing still. This is what they both fear and crave. Deep down, people want to follow something real. But first, they test it. They poke, prod, push, waiting to see if you'll collapse, waiting to see if your strength is performance or principle. The moment you flinch, the moment you react to their disapproval, they know. They know you're still owned, still waiting for permission. But if you hold, if you stay quiet, still, sure, they break. They feel it. That you're not here to please, that you've killed the boy who needed to be liked, that you're speaking not for attention, but because it must be said. That's when they lean in. That's when they follow. Because you've crossed the threshold that separates the performer from the presence, the puppet from the prince. Once you cross that line, everything shifts. You've murdered the need that once dictated your tone, your posture, your decisions. You've burned the altar where you once laid your worth, hoping they'd kneel. And what remains is pure will, untouched by compliments, unshaken by contempt. You no longer broadcast your soul hoping someone will understand. You walk with silence sharp enough to carve obedience. And those who once ignored you now feel something different when you enter the room. Not recognition, not affection, tension. Because power, real power, doesn't ask to be seen. It makes itself felt. Here's the irony. The moment you stop needing their validation, they start offering it endlessly. Praise that once eluded you now drips from the mouths of the same people who doubted you. Why? Because they finally believe you. Not because your words changed, but because you changed. Your energy stopped asking. Your body stopped bending. Your eyes stopped pleading. You became a man who would rather walk alone than ever kneel again. And people respond to that. Not because they're noble, but because they're wired to follow strength. Your indifference activates their instincts. Your stillness commands them. Even those who hate you begin to obey you. But don't be fooled. Validation is still poison, especially when it arrives after your rise. Because it will come dressed in loyalty, in awe, in admiration. And the weak part of you, the ghost you buried, will want to drink. Don't. Spit it out. You didn't come this far to be seduced by the same trap wearing a prettier mask. You didn't climb this high to be bought by compliments you no longer need. Stay cold. Stay clear. Let their praise melt before it reaches you. Let their approval hit the walls of your self-certainty and fall lifeless to the floor. Because if their clapping can sway you, their silence can still stop you. Never again. Instead, feed on something deeper. Integrity, solitude, purpose without permission. Walk not because they cheer, but because the path is yours. Speak not because they listen, but because silence would betray your fire. Lead not because they follow, but because your direction cannot be negotiated. That is how you stay free. That is how you stay real. One day they'll ask how you did it, how you stayed unmoved, unbroken, unknown until it was too late to stop you. And your answer will be simple. I stopped needing to be seen. Let them misunderstand. Let them project. Let them call you cold, arrogant, unreachable. You no longer owe them warmth. You owe yourself truth. And truth, when spoken from a sovereign mouth, sounds like violence to the insecure. Let it burn their illusions. Let it silence their shallow noise. Let it ripple through their world like a prophecy they weren't ready for. Because you are no longer their mirror. You are no longer their echo. You are no longer theirs. If you've made it this far, something in you has already let go. Something in you has already stopped reaching, stopped waiting, stopped apologizing for your presence. You're ready to walk without handrails. You're ready to speak without rehearsal. You're ready to exist without being approved. This is the threshold. This is where the old self dies and the new self rises. The one who doesn't wait to be chosen. The one who doesn't hope for applause. The one who walks in silence and doesn't look back. You've reached the point where you no longer scan faces for clues, no longer soften your tone to keep the peace. You walk, and the ground adjusts. You speak, and the air changes. You don't need to push anymore. Your stillness does the work. This is presence. This is domination. The kind that doesn't shout or beg to be respected. It simply commands it. You're not here to be loved or to soothe. You're here to rule yourself, to create order through presence, direction through clarity, and quiet fear through stillness. None of that requires validation. In fact, the more you chase approval, the further you drift from power. Those who beg to be respected are never remembered. You don't get respect, you project it. You demand it without speaking, and the only way to do that is to move as if the throne is already yours. Walk into every room as if it's smaller than your will. Let your certainty fill the space. Doubt may still appear, but let it burn before it lands. You were born powerful, but from the start, they trained you to beg. Every system, school, work, family, taught you to wait. Raise your hand, ask permission, stay agreeable. They rewarded obedience and called it virtue. They taught you that being loved meant being smaller than your instincts. So you folded your fire. You learned to smile instead of confront, to blend instead of lead. But that polite, hesitant mask was never you. It was a survival costume. And it's time to rip it off with force if necessary. Beneath it lies the man who never needed applause to act, the one who never waited to be chosen. When that man wakes up, he won't care if they cheer. He won't care if they leave. He won't care if they call him arrogant or unreachable, because he knows real respect is born from distance, not dependence. When he enters a room, people feel it, not because he's loud, but because his silence carries weight. His peace feels dangerous. His calm feels like control. That's what they'll never understand. You didn't change to become cold. You changed to become clear. You stopped needing to be understood. You stopped translating your truth into something digestible. Because every time you did, you traded authenticity for acceptance. and you're done with that. Let them talk. Let them twist your silence into stories. Let them say you've become distant. Good. Let distance be your armor. Let misunderstanding be your gatekeeper. You're not obligated to comfort those who misunderstand your transformation. Their confusion is not your responsibility. Their discomfort is proof your evolution worked. The man who no longer explains himself has finally arrived, and the world will test him. They'll provoke you, mock you, label your detachment ego. But remember, they only label what they can't control. Your refusal to bend exposes their dependence. Your calm reveals their chaos. Your direction reminds them how lost they are. Don't respond. Don't react. Don't waste breath justifying your silence to those addicted to noise. Let your restraint unsettle them, because once you stop flinching at their disapproval, they lose their grip. They can't manipulate what they can't move. You've crossed the threshold, and there's no going back. The old version of you, the one who waited to be chosen, who softened his voice to be accepted, who begged silently for applause, is gone. You buried him the moment you stopped asking for permission to exist. What remains is sharper, quieter, and infinitely more dangerous. You no longer chase validation. You command respect without effort. That's the paradox of power. The second you stop needing to be seen, everyone begins to notice. You move differently now. Every gesture carries weight. Every silence lands like a statement. You no longer rush to explain, to justify, or to convince. You let the air around you do the speaking. Because real power doesn't need volume, it bends reality by presence alone. People feel it before they understand it. They can't define it, can't predict it, and that unsettles them. You've become a reminder of what true sovereignty looks like, something they can sense but never control. You're not here to comfort the world. You're here to disrupt it. You're not here to fit in, you're here to create gravity, the kind that pulls everything weaker into orbit. You no longer dim your fire so others can shine. You burn unapologetically and let them adjust or melt. And when they whisper that you've become cold, let them. It isn't coldness, it's precision. It's the temperature of someone who no longer bleeds to be understood. This is what freedom actually feels like. You don't rise and fall with the opinions of others. Compliments don't move you, and insults don't break you. Praise and hatred blur into background noise. You've stepped out of the economy of approval. You don't trade truth for comfort or authenticity for affection. You're immune to manipulation now, because they have nothing left to offer that you need. They can't flatter you, guilt you, or buy you. You are no longer for sale. But remember, this isn't arrogance. Arrogance screams to be seen. Power is content in silence. Arrogance performs. Power simply exists. You no longer need to announce who you are. You embody it. You've stopped chasing control because you've become it. You choose peace not to appear enlightened, but because chaos no longer fuels you. The sign of mastery is not dominance, it's indifference. When you no longer react, you reign. The world, of course, will test you. It always does. It will send back every old temptation dressed in new clothing. Validation will return disguised as admiration. Approval will come hidden in loyalty. Don't drink from it. You didn't kill your old self just to be seduced by the same poison in a prettier bottle. If their applause can raise you, their silence can still destroy you. Stay untouchable. Let their praise crash against your certainty and fall flat. Feed yourself instead with solitude, clarity, and direction. Walk not because they cheer, but because the path belongs to you. Speak not because they listen, but because silence would betray your conviction. Lead not to be followed, but because you cannot do anything else. This is leadership. Not popularity, but movement born from certainty. You are no longer motivated by the crowd's reaction. You move because motion is your nature. And soon they'll ask how you did it, how you became unshakable, how you stood calm while others begged to be seen, how you built a life that didn't depend on being understood. And your answer will be simple. I stopped needing to be seen. You didn't fight the world, you outgrew it. You didn't argue louder, you went silent. And that silence became your crown. The applause didn't end because you failed. It ended because you stopped auditioning. Let them misread you. Let them project their fragility onto your strength. Let them call you cold, arrogant, unreachable. You owe them nothing. You owe yourself truth. And truth, when spoken by a sovereign soul, sounds like thunder to the insecure. Let it echo. Let it break their illusions. Let it burn away every shallow story they told about you. You are no longer their mirror, reflecting what they need to believe. You are their lesson. And when the lights go out, when the noise fades, and the room falls silent, what remains will be you. Whole, grounded, complete. You won't need to perform anymore. You won't need to prove anything. You'll simply walk as if the throne was always yours, because it was it. You built it from isolation. You fortified it with discipline. You crowned yourself with clarity. You were never made to be liked. You were made to be remembered. The man who no longer needs validation, the one who can walk through silence without bending, is the man the world cannot erase, because he doesn't live for their applause anymore. He lives for his own will, and that, more than anything, is what makes him untouchable. And now, as the world keeps spinning, you no longer dance to its rhythm. You've become the still point in its chaos, the eye of the storm that cannot be moved. You walk through noise without reacting, through praise without pride, through rejection without pain. Because now, your worth isn't measured by how they see you, but by how unwavering you remain when no one's watching. They'll whisper your name, not out of love, but out of recognition, because presence like yours cannot be ignored. You are no longer seeking light. You are the light, contained, deliberate, and dangerous. You've mastered the one law all rulers eventually learn. The world doesn't belong to the loud, it belongs to the unshakable. And so you walk, calm as fire, certain as stone, untouched by applause or silence. For the man who no longer needs to be seen has already become what they all secretly fear and secretly wish to be: free.